Welcome to GeoFrontier, the channel where global politics, geography, and strategy come together. In this video, we explore the growing geopolitical importance of Greenland and why this remote, Arctic island is attracting attention from major world powers. From security and climate change to economics and sovereignty. You'll discover how Greenland is shaping the future of Arctic geopolitics. Greenland is often described in extremes: vast, frozen, remote, empty. The words sound factual, but they quietly distort reality. Greenland is not a blank space on the map. 'Tis a lived-in land, shaped by geography, history, and a people whose roots stretch back thousands of years. Geographically, Greenland is the largest island on Earth, covering more than 2 million square kilometers. About 80% of it is buried beneath a massive ice sheet, one of the planet's largest freshwater reserves. In some places, the ice rises more than 3 kilometers thick. But life doesn't exist on the ice. It exists along the coast in ice-free areas of fjords, rocky shorelines, and open sea. Roughly 56,000 people call Greenland home. Most are Inuit, with a culture deeply connected to the Arctic environment. The population is small, but that does not mean absence. It reflects the limits of geography and climate. Survival here has always required adaptation, cooperation, and deep environmental knowledge. The climate shapes everything. Long winters and harsh weather affect transportation, food supply, and construction. There are no roads linking towns. Communities rely on air and sea, making infrastructure costly and fragile. Governance must account for logistical challenges most nations never face. Economically, fishing dominates exports, not by chance, but because the surrounding seas are the most reliable resource. Other industries face high costs and environmental risk. Geography sets boundaries, and those boundaries shape political choices. Greenland is not politically empty either. It has democratic institutions, an active parliament, and strong civic participation. Debates over autonomy, development, and cultural preservation are central to public life. The idea of Greenland as unused land is not just wrong, it is misleading. Low population density does not mean lack of identity, ownership, or political will. Greenland is defined not by emptiness, but by endurance. A society built and sustained at the edge of the habitable world. Any serious conversation about Greenland's future must begin here with the people who live on the land, not the ice that covers it. Greenland's political status did not appear overnight, and it did not begin with a single declaration of independence. Instead, it is the result of a long, careful journey shaped by negotiation, adaptation, and changing ideas about self-rule. Danish involvement began in 1721, when Denmark-Norway established a colonial presence through missionary activity and trade. Over time, that presence evolved into formal control from Copenhagen. For generations, Greenlanders had little influence over decisions about their land, economy, or future. Greenland operated within a closed economic system. Trade monopolies limited outside contact, and development followed colonial priorities. While this created a measure of stability, it also deepened dependence and restricted political participation. The mid-20th century marked a turning point. World War II exposed Greenland's strategic importance and weakened older colonial structures. In 1953, Greenland was formally incorporated into the Kingdom of Denmark. Greenlanders gained Danish citizenship and representation in parliament, but real decision-making power remained limited. As global decolonization movements gained momentum, political awareness grew at home. In 1979, Greenland achieved home rule, gaining authority over education, healthcare, and internal affairs, while Denmark retained control over foreign policy and defense. That evolution continued in 2009 with the Self-Government Act. Greenlanders were recognized as a distinct people, and control over natural resources and law enforcement was transferred to local authorities. The act also established a legal pathway toward full independence should the population choose it. Today, Greenland occupies a unique position, self-governing, yet still connected to Denmark. Its story is not one of sudden rupture, but of gradual transformation, a steady rebalancing of power that continues to shape its future. Did you know America's interest in Greenland isn't new? For over 150 years, the U.S. has viewed this massive island as a key piece of its strategic puzzle. It's a story driven not by politics, but by pure geography. It all started back in 1867. When the United States bought Alaska from Russia, it suddenly became an Arctic nation. American leaders looked at a map and saw this huge island, Greenland, sitting right between North America and Europe. It was the perfect strategic anchor. Early on, it wasn't about the people or resources. Greenland was seen as a platform fixed point for communication lines, a military outpost, and a way to control vital shipping routes in the North Atlantic. Throughout the late 19th and early 20th centuries, this idea kept popping up in government reports and quiet diplomatic discussions. The pattern was clear. Greenland was a strategic asset. Then came World War II. When Germany occupied Denmark in 1940, the U.S. acted fast to secure Greenland. Airfields and weather stations were built, turning the island into an unsinkable aircraft carrier, crucial bridge for supplies and planes heading to Europe. After the war, the Cold War heated up, and Greenland's importance skyrocketed. The Arctic became the shortest flight path for bombers and missiles between the U.S. and the Soviet Union. Greenland was the front line for early warning radar systems, the cornerstone of North American defense. From the purchase of Alaska to the tense days of the Cold War, Greenland quietly became essential to American security. Not as a territory to own, but for its unmatched position at the top of the world. Greenland's rising geopolitical importance isn't driven by one factor, but by three powerful forces working together: military positioning, mineral potential, and climate-driven ice melt. Alone, each matters. Combined, they turn a remote Arctic land into a center of global competition. First is military positioning. Greenland sits between North America and Europe, directly under the shortest paths for long-range aircraft and missiles. From a defense standpoint, that location is decisive. NATO assessments identify the Arctic as critical for early warning, space surveillance, and missile defense. From Greenland, activity across the North Atlantic and polar region can be monitored, making its military role foundational to transatlantic security. Second is minerals. Greenland holds significant deposits of rare earth elements and other critical materials essential for renewable energy, advanced electronics, and defense technology. Extracting them, however, is difficult. Extreme weather, limited infrastructure, high costs, and environmental concerns slow development. Still, as demand grows, Greenland is increasingly viewed as a strategic alternative to existing supply chains. The third force is climate-driven ice melt, the accelerant connecting the other two. As ice retreats, new shipping routes open and access improves. For militaries, that means more activity to monitor. For businesses, new opportunities and new risks. Together, these forces reinforce one another. Increased access drives competition. Competition drives military planning, and climate change intensifies both. Greenland is no longer peripheral. It is becoming central to global strategy. In a region with small populations, fragile ecosystems, and limited infrastructure, decisions made far away carry enormous consequences. Military logic, economic ambition, and environmental change are converging here, ensuring Greenland will remain a key arena shaping the future of the Arctic for decades to come. Greenland is often portrayed as a future mining powerhouse, a frozen land packed with rare earth elements and critical minerals that could reshape global supply chains. It's a powerful narrative in an age of technological competition and clean energy transition. But beneath the ice, the reality is far more complicated. The gap between mineral potential and economic feasibility is wide and often misunderstood. Geological surveys confirm that Greenland does contain rare earth elements, uranium, iron, ore, and other strategic minerals essential for electric vehicles, wind turbines, and defense systems. On paper, the island looks promising, but geology alone doesn't make a mine. Mining in Greenland faces severe constraints. Extreme weather shortens operating seasons. Remote locations demand costly infrastructure ports, roads, and energy systems built from scratch. Skilled labor is scarce, and operating in Arctic conditions drives expenses even higher. Environmental concerns add another layer. Greenland's ecosystems are fragile, and many mining sites lie near vital fishing grounds that sustain local communities and culture. Projects that threaten marine life immediately raise questions about long-term sustainability. Local perspectives matter deeply. Many Greenlanders approach large-scale mining with caution, shaped by past experiences where outside investors overpromised and under-delivered. Community consent, environmental safeguards, and realistic planning are not obstacles. They are essential conditions. Financial realities also temper expectations. Mineral markets fluctuate, competition is fierce, and Greenland lacks the scale that makes mining profitable elsewhere. Many proposed projects struggle to secure funding or stall after early exploration. Ultimately, the debate isn't just about resources underground. It's about governance, environmental stewardship, and economic realism. Greenland's mineral wealth may capture global attention, but only careful. Grounded decisions will determine whether that potential ever becomes reality. Have you ever wondered why a giant island of ice is so important? Let's talk about Greenland, a place that's becoming a major hotspot in global military strategy. Right at the top of the world, Greenland sits in a critical spot between North America and Europe. For decades, this has made it incredibly valuable. The key player here is the Pichafik Space Base, formerly Thule Air Base. This is the U.S. military's northernmost installation, and it's not just for show. It houses a powerful early warning radar system that can detect incoming ballistic missiles, giving North America vital time to react. Plus, it's a crucial hub for space surveillance, tracking satellites and space debris. Think of it as America's eyes and ears in the high north. Then there's the GIUK gap, which stands for Greenland, Iceland, and the United Kingdom. This is a naval choke point that submarines and warships from the North Atlantic would have to pass through to reach the open ocean. Controlling this gap is essential for NATO to monitor naval movements, especially from Russia's northern fleet. Greenland's location makes it a perfect anchor for surveillance operations in this area, using sonar arrays and patrol aircraft. Now, let's add climate change to the mix. As the Arctic ice melts, new shipping routes like the Northwest Passage and the Northern Sea Route are opening up. These routes are much shorter than traditional ones, which means more commercial and military traffic is coming. This also makes the vast natural resources in the Arctic like oil, gas, and rare minerals more accessible. Suddenly, countries are scrambling for influence and control, and Greenland is right in the middle of it all. Its strategic importance is only going to grow as the ice continues to melt. So Greenland is much more than just a massive sheet of ice. It's a critical piece on the global chessboard, a sentinel watching the skies, and a gateway to the future of the Arctic. Have you heard about the Greenland crisis of 2025? It wasn't about armies or invasions. It started with just a few words. Picture this: high-level US officials suddenly started talking about Greenland again. Not as a self-governing partner, but as a strategic piece of real estate, almost like something you could buy or control. This wasn't a classic fight over borders. It was something much deeper, a test of trust between allies. The reaction was instant. Leaders in Greenland flat out rejected this idea. In Denmark, it was seen as a direct challenge to their sovereignty. And across Europe, leaders started worrying, thinking, if this can happen to Greenland, who's next? journalist Stefan Grob called it a shock. Not because anyone thought a sale was actually going to happen, but because of what it represented. For decades, the entire relationship between North America and Europe was built on a few core ideas. You respect each other as territory, you talk to each other as partners, and you don't use your power to bully an ally. This new rhetoric seemed to throw all of that into question. So, what happened next? Greenlandic and Danish officials calmly but firmly pointed to international law and the right to self-determination. They reminded everyone that Greenland's future is for Greenlanders to decide. As the story blew up in the media, European leaders brought it to the main stage, making it an issue for the entire alliance. A diplomacy expert, Vesko Garvivik, summed it up perfectly. This was a crisis of norms, not a crisis over land. No one ever thought Greenland was about to be seized. The real fear was about the slow erosion of the rules that hold alliances together. Can a powerful country just openly question an ally's right to its own territory without any consequences? By the end of 2025, the diplomatic storm had passed, and everyone went back to business as usual. But the incident left behind a really important question that we're still grappling with today, in a world where power is constantly shifting. Just how strong are the unwritten rules that keep friends and allies together? One of the most defining aspects of the Greenland crisis was not the rhetoric coming from abroad, but the response from within Greenland itself. Across political parties, social groups, and regions, Greenlanders delivered a clear and unified message. The future of Greenland must be decided by Greenlanders. In Greenland's parliament, the Inatsisartut, leaders from across the political spectrum rejected any suggestion that Greenland could be treated as a negotiable asset. Political parties that normally disagree on economic policy or independence timelines spoke with rare unity on one principle: self-determination. Officials emphasized that Greenland's political status is defined by democratic choice, legal frameworks, and international recognition. Their statements were not framed against any specific country. Instead, they focused on respect, partnership, and the right of Greenland's people to determine their own path. This unity was not limited to Parliament. Civil society organizations, indigenous groups, and community leaders echoed the same message. Many Inuit organizations noted that discussions about Greenland often happen without listening to Greenlanders themselves, a pattern rooted in history. Public demonstrations and symbolic protests reinforced this stance. Though small in scale, they carried strong meaning. Messages focused on dignity, sovereignty, and voice. The response also showed Greenland's growing political maturity. Decades of self-government have built institutions capable of responding quickly and clearly during moments of international attention. In the end, Greenlanders did more than oppose outside narratives. They defined their own. And in doing so, they reminded the world of a simple truth. Political influence does not depend on population size, but on unity, legitimacy, and the willingness of a people to speak for themselves. As the debate over Greenland intensified, opposition came not only from politicians and citizens. It also emerged strongly from two communities, often outside traditional power structures: scientists and indigenous leaders. For climate researchers, Greenland is far more than a strategic location. Its massive ice sheet plays a critical role in regulating global sea levels and ocean circulation. Decades of research show that even small increases in Arctic temperatures can trigger major and sometimes irreversible environmental change. Because of this, many scientists warned that policies driven by geopolitical competition could damage one of the most fragile regions on Earth. Military expansion, infrastructure projects, and resource extraction all carry environmental risks. And in the Arctic, ecosystems recover very slowly. At the same time, indigenous leaders offered another powerful perspective. For Inuit communities, Greenland is not simply territory on a map. It is a living cultural landscape where land, ice, and sea are deeply connected to identity and tradition. Indigenous organizations stress that Arctic peoples have long experienced decisions imposed from distant capitals. Because of that history, they insisted that local communities must be central to any discussion about Greenland's future. Together, scientists and indigenous leaders reframed the debate, shifting the focus away from ownership and towards stewardship, protecting a region whose future affects the entire planet. The Greenland episode was never just about Greenland for Europe. It quickly became a test of credibility for the European Union, for transatlantic relations, and for the rules-based order that has shaped global politics for decades. European leaders worried about precedent. If a powerful ally could question the political status of a self-governing territory connected to a European country, it could weaken international norms. Analysts warned that even rhetorical challenges to sovereignty can erode expectations if they go unanswered. European officials responded carefully. They emphasized international law, self-determination, and respect for existing constitutional arrangements. For Europe, stability depends on legal frameworks rather than power politics. The situation also highlighted tensions between the EU and NATO. Many countries belong to both organizations, meaning security cooperation depends on shared values and trust. Across Europe, governments voiced support for Denmark and Greenland. While reactions differed in intensity, the message was clear. Greenland's status can only be decided by its people, by responding calmly and collectively. Europe aimed to defend international norms without escalating tensions, reinforcing the idea that credibility is maintained through consistency, not confrontation. The Greenland crisis revealed a rarely visible tension inside NATO: the difficulty of maintaining alliance unity when pressure comes from within, not from outside threats. NATO was created to deter external enemies, not to manage disputes triggered by its own members. At the heart of the alliance is consensus. Every major decision requires agreement among members with different strategic priorities and political pressures. This system creates legitimacy and unity, but it can also expose vulnerabilities when members disagree on acceptable behavior. During the Greenland episode, NATO faced a difficult balance. Alliance unity required restraint and quiet diplomacy, while several members felt pressure to defend core principles such as sovereignty and self-determination. Because NATO has no mechanism to enforce rhetoric among allies, its tools remain persuasion, consultation, and reassurance. This reflects the alliance's design: a military organization focused on deterrence, not a political court. In the end, the crisis did not break NATO, but it highlighted the delicate balance that sustains the alliance, constantly navigating between unity, sovereignty, and internal pressure in an increasingly complex strategic environment. Greenland's dream of greater independence is deeply connected to its economic reality. While the desire for self-rule is strong, the path forward depends on how the country's economy can sustain itself. Today, Greenland's economy relies heavily on fishing. Seafood exports, especially shrimp and halibut, make up most of its export income and connect the island to markets in Europe and Asia. But depending on one sector creates risk. Changes in fish stocks, global prices, or climate conditions could quickly affect jobs and national revenue. Another major factor is financial support from Denmark. Greenland receives a large annual subsidy that funds essential services like healthcare, education, and infrastructure. Without this support, the government would need new sources of income to maintain these systems. Development is also expensive. Greenland's vast distances, harsh climate, and limited infrastructure make building roads, ports, and energy systems extremely costly. Because of these realities, many experts believe independence is not just a political decision, it is a long-term economic project. For Greenland, the challenge is finding the balance between national ambition and sustainable economic strength. Discussions about Greenland extend far beyond the island itself. Often, Greenland acts as an Arctic mirror, reflecting how global powers perceive shifting geopolitics in the high north. Russia, the dominant Arctic military power, focuses on its own territory. In January 2026, President Putin stated Greenland's ownership was of no concern to Russia, while criticizing Denmark's colonial history, signaling strategic distance rather than direct ambition. China, as a near-Arctic state, has explored scientific and economic projects in Greenland. But most proposals remain unrealized. Despite limited footprints, the perception of Russian and Chinese interest amplifies US and European strategic attention. Greenland's government retains control over permitting, environment, and politics, ensuring local agency. Yet global perception reframes the island as a strategic vulnerability. In the end, Greenland is less a battlefield and more a lens through which world powers project rivalry, history, and caution, highlighting the complex dynamics of an increasingly contested Arctic. Greenland is often portrayed as a strategic prize for larger powers, but this framing misses the reality. It is an emerging political actor, shaping its own engagement with the world. Despite a small population, Greenland wields geographic leverage between North America and Europe and exercises legal authority over resources, governance, and environmental decisions. Through careful self-government, Greenland decides which projects proceed, whether mining, infrastructure, or military expansion, and which are delayed or rejected. This is small state agency, where influence comes from control, institutions, and strategic choice rather than sheer size. Like Iceland hosting NATO bases or the Baltic states shaping European security through diplomacy. Greenland amplifies its voice by diversifying partnerships, investing in Arctic research, and asserting indigenous perspectives. This transforms Greenland from a passive object into an active subject. It's no longer just who will control Greenland. It's about how Greenland chooses to engage, exercising authority, consent, and legitimacy. In the Arctic, this distinction marks its evolution from pawn to protagonist. The Greenland debate is no longer just about who wants influence. It's about what future will emerge from competing interests. Analysts see three possible paths: cooperation, confrontation, or fragmentation. In partnership, Greenland, Denmark, the US, and European allies align through negotiation, respecting institutions, security, and the environment, treating Greenland as a partner, not a prize. Confrontation sees pressure intensify over resources, military access, and politics, narrowing Greenland's agency and straining alliances. Fragmentation is subtler but destabilizing, with splintered governance and reactive decision-making weakening oversight. Across all scenarios, one fact remains: Greenlanders are no longer silent. Public opinion, parliament, and indigenous institutions shape outcomes. The future will emerge gradually through choice, resilience, and agency. Greenland is not waiting to be claimed. It's walking forward, shaping its path, and redefining power in the Arctic. Thanks for watching this deep dive into Greenland's role in global politics. Understanding how geography, strategy, and local agency intersect shows why even remote regions influence the world. If you found this insightful, like and subscribe to GeoFrontier, your channel for clear, factual, and analytical content on global affairs. Following the channel helps make complex topics accessible for everyone.